Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. You are listening to Transform Your Life with Kellie and Lisa. For some reason, I had an echo in my ear there. Sorry about that. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning, Kellie. I just want to say really quickly, we still need an intro to our radio show.
Mm-hmm. We do. We absolutely do.
Anyway, go ahead.
It's been a couple of years,
Good morning.
This morning is kind of one of those shows that's going to take a left turn. I can tell you that right away because between the time where I set up the show and now that we're actually doing the show, a couple of things have happened that have just really, really, really gotten me. And, you know, we are going to start out talking about bad days because it kind of, you know, if you don't deal with these things and don't talk about what's going on, it can really build up and make you really, really have a bad day. You know, everybody has bad days. There's no way to avoid a bad day. Even if you're a wonderfully happy, positive person like I generally consider myself to be, you're still going to have a bad day. Things do pile up. And how do you move past a bad day? Music has always been my go-to. If I'm really angry, I tend to drum. You know, you go out and hit a drum. It really makes you feel better. But other people are dancers, and they put on their favorite music and they dance. And, you know, other people go for a walk. Sometimes just walking outside makes me feel better. So I think the first thing to say when you're having a bad day is to recognize you're having a bad day. It's all right. You know, no one expects you to be positive all the time. The severity of your bad day is, of course, going to be in direct relation to what it was that set you off. And that's kind of where I'm taking the show next because, you know, it always seems like there are so few people trying to do so much. And in my world of animal rescue, that's just the way it is. You know, not everyone can rescue. And unfortunately, even the people who say, well, I'm sorry, I would do something, but I just can't, don't realize. Do you have an old towel in your house? That old towel can be donated to an animal shelter and used for bedding or for cleanup. Animal shelters are always in need of old towels, old blankets, old anything. And those are things that a lot of people would just throw away because they don't think about it. The other day, I'm always a person who gets called whenever there's an animal issue anywhere in the general vicinity of my house or sometimes of my state. And every time I get one of those calls, it seems like I run into the same 5 or 6 people when I get there. It's always the same handful of people that are trying to do so much. I have a friend right now who does animal rescue who has, at this very moment, 18 dogs because she could not turn her back on them in a hoarding situation. That's really common. It isn't just where I live, it's everywhere. There are so few people doing so much. One of the things that I'm doing today is shuttling dogs to the vet. They're not coming home with me. They're not at my house now. But I'm the taxi cab for these dogs. And every time I'm called to do that, I wonder, couldn't some of these people that say, oh, I love dogs, but I can't foster, couldn't they pick up a dog and take it to the vet and take it back to the foster home? You know, there are so many ways to get involved that people just, I'll just let somebody else do it. And when you are those people, you're one of those people that always gets involved, it can lead to a whole lot of bad days, you know, because you're always thinking, well, you know, somebody else will step up, and nobody else does. And it really, really makes it difficult to practice good self-care, which is what we've talked about on this show a lot. The path isn't always crystal clear. Sometimes it goes around a corner and you don't really see where you're going. But if you keep going, and if the same things keep cropping up in your life where you keep seeing, for whatever reason, you keep seeing that same person on TV saying, we need help, we need volunteers, maybe that's a signal to you to maybe step up. Maybe you can't take 5 dogs home. Few people can. But maybe you have that old towel that you can donate. You know, maybe you can give $1, $5. Maybe you can donate dog food. You know, we had a lady who had several dogs, and her oldest dog died, and she said, I no longer need a great big huge bag of dog food, so I would like to donate half of this bag of dog food. And we said, yay, thank you. You know, it doesn't really have to cost you anything. Sometimes it's a matter of telling your friends, why are you looking at breeders on Craigslist? Why don't you go to a shelter or a rescue organization to adopt a dog? You know, that's kind of simple things that everybody can do. You know, everybody has people in their sphere of influence, and you can have an influence on those people. And sometimes you say, you know, go adopt a dog, and you'll get met with, but you don't know their history. Well, truthfully, your friends, you know, unless you've known them your whole life, you don't know everything that's happened to them. I always kind of compare it to dating. When my daughter was dating, she was one of the ones who was like, Mom, I want a purebred dog. And I was like, well, go to a shelter and find one. And she says, but I don't know the history. And that came from my daughter, who grew up with me in my house with rescue animals. And I said, that guy you're dating, do you know his history? Yet you're willing to take him home with you. And she said, Mom, that's crude. And I said, yes, but it got your attention. Sometimes we need to do things to get people's attention. And that brings me right back to the other thing that happened between the time I set up the show and the time we started it. And that is my dear friend, Robert Tremblay, who is a saint among people. And he has been living for a very long time now with end-stage AIDS. Now, it doesn't matter that Robert's not gay, but he isn't, which to me says more about that disease than people are wanting to realize. You know, when AIDS started being recognized as a disease, it was considered a gay person's disease. But truthfully, over the last couple of years, more heterosexual people and more women have contracted AIDS than gay people. And yet we're not talking about that. You know, we're not talking about that. Oh, nobody wants to admit that could be possible. Oh, how is that even possible? And yet it's happening. So Robert, living with end-stage AIDS, took on an epic journey, leaving his home in Arizona, going all the way to Washington, D.C., to talk to lawmakers about health care. And he did speaking across the country. He has a book. It's called 20 Seconds, and everyone should go out and buy it. And he has an organization called Give a Buck. Give a Buck is for educating people about AIDS and for trying to educate and call attention to AIDS enough so that researchers really step up and do something to find a cure and prevention for this disease. $1. It's called Give a Buck. It's $1. And through the years, he amassed 127,000 followers. And through this journey of his park tour, speaking in the park and meeting people in the park and giving away copies of his book and selling copies of his book and trying to reach lawmakers and trying to call attention to this disease, 127,000 followers he amassed. 3 of them gave $1. Now, that's deplorable. That's not even, he gives and gives and gives and gives, much like people in animal rescue or people who work with special needs children or foster parents or people caring for other people. You give and you give and you give and you give until there's nothing left to give. And then people around you snap when you have a bad day. When you say, forget this, I no longer care. And you have a really bad time. And things get really, really dark. And then people say, oh, I thought you were positive. How could you do this? How can you do this to me? Yeah, how can anybody do that to you? I heard a couple of people this morning respond to Robert's lengthy post, and it's on my timeline on Facebook. Go find it. And they were, wow, he's really angry. Yeah, I would think he would be really angry. And yeah, that's not his normal personality. He's having a bad day. Unfortunately, or fortunately, with social media, more and more and more people are realizing we're all human. And even those most positive people have bad days. And when you're having such a bad day, you really think you need to share it with everybody else. That kind of compounds that a bad day brings. How do you move on from that? You know, where do you go from there? Well, in Robert's case, his nonprofit, Give a Buck, is going bankrupt, and he's throwing in the towel. But not everybody does that. You know, there are plenty of other organizations that aren't literally dying. How do they get past something like that? You know, have we become as a society so unforgiving and so accepting of the fact that everyone is human that we turn our backs on organizations when they have a bad day? You know, A Gentle Barn is another organization. They do animal rescue. They recently lost a beloved steer, Dudley. And one of their people posted about their bad day. And they kind of got the same response that Robert got. In that, oh, how can you be so angry? How can you do this to us, your followers? And yet I wanted to ask how many of those followers really support that organization. It's really good for everyone to give things lip service. You know, I'm a co-founder of a magazine, and we put Robert Tremblay on the cover in the last issue, and he's on the back page in the one that's just coming out. Great to give lip service. But lip service doesn't pay people's bills. And I guess my whole point here is whether it's animal rescue, whether it's special needs kids, whether it is Special Olympics, whether it is AIDS, whether it is cancer, it doesn't matter what tugs at your heartstrings most. Support them wholly. Don't just do lip service. A lot of times, people who start these organizations have taken a gigantic leap of faith in starting those organizations and in coming out of the shadows and in sharing their stories and of saying, hey, look, this is what's going on. I need help. Support them. You know, Jeremy Boss in Texas has a horrible, horrible, horrible situation going on near where he lives in that people dump dogs there. They've also dumped people there, by the way. But anyway, he's concerned with people putting puppies in plastic bags or dogs in plastic bags, hitting them over the head with a shovel and tossing them out in this dumping ground. And he recently posted a video where he was this is a big man from Texas, where men are bigger than life, bawling his eyes out because he just doesn't have the help that he needs. Here's a guy who's stepping up. And again, people on social media are like, oh, that's great, that's awesome, I love what you're doing, blah, 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 blah. And when it comes down to doing something or getting further involved, people are like, it's like crickets. So while this is not what the show is intended to be about, I really hope that listeners realize lip service is amazing. But I want each and every one of you to call your power company and say, you're the best power company ever. I'm not going to pay my bill or give you any money, but you are the best. And see where that gets you. Because that's what's happening, is we are losing our positive warriors on this planet to lip service. I just want everyone to think about that. Sorry for that, Lisa. I totally went off there.
That is quite all right. I don't mind. It's one of those days. I don't really have a lot to talk about. Can you believe it?
It really, when really good people have given their all and the response that they get is anything less than, what do you need for me to give you? What do you need for me to do for you? I'm really disgusted with people. Right. It's not something that's new. It's not something that hasn't been going on since the dawn of time. There's always been a really few people trying to do an awful lot of stuff. But when it's someone that is close to me, it really, really brings it home. And quite frankly, I'm trying to not have a bad day because of it right now. It's really, I see it on social media all the time. There are wonderful people trying to do wonderful things. And so often it's like, yeah, that's great. Here, let me like your post. And they don't even share the post, but they'll like it, and they think that's showing support, which is nice. Don't get me wrong. It's nice. But I think each and every one of us needs to accept a little bit more responsibility for what goes on our planet. It's the time where we can say, yeah, that's great. Good for you for doing that. That's long since passed. We're at the critical point now, and we really need to step up and accept some individual responsibility for doing good stuff. And I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's AIDS. I don't care if it's cancer. I don't care if it's animals. I don't care if it's orangutans in the jungle. Do something good, and I mean do it. Step up. You can't keep turning a blind eye anymore. We just can't. That's part of the reason, in my personal opinion, and I have made a vow never to discuss politics, but here we go. That's my personal opinion on what's wrong with the United States right now. The government has become so powerful and so in their own little ivory tower that all they can do for the general population is try to divide us into little segments and pit us against each other. And that's what we're seeing with people being so angry and people being so hostile to each other, is because they've been made to believe that we are each other's enemies. And it's not that the government is an enemy per se, but we have let them have runaway power for too long. And I don't care, a friend of mine said the other night, Republican, Democrat, iceberg, Goldberg, what's the difference? And that's the truth, because we have not taken that responsibility individually to stand up and say, you know what, I don't agree with that. And we've just kind of been kept fat, dumb, and happy. And, people aren't happy anymore. And there are people in this country that are having trouble eating. And there are people in this country that are still dying from inadequate health care. And that's wrong. And each and every one of us individually bears that responsibility because we didn't stand up and say enough. So that is all I have today. And believe me, that's quite enough. I know I'm already getting messages. I see them popping up here. And as much as I would love to add people to this conversation, if I do, I know it will not end well. So I appreciate you guys calling in. Send me your comments. Post them on Facebook. Go find Robert Trembley's post this morning that I shared and read it, and then give me your comments. What do you think, Lisa? Are we done for today? Next week will be better, I promise.
I think so.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys. Find something that works for you to bring this around to what the show was supposed to be about. Find something that works for you when you're having a bad day. Find something that gives you courage, and I'm not talking drugs or alcohol, when you need to take a leap of faith. Because sometimes that's exactly what you need to do to get out of a bad day or to get over something that is going on. You have to believe that things are going to get better. Sometimes, I know there was a movie, I can't remember the name of it, but it was it was about cars, and it was with that song, Lowrider. That was the music that they listened to psych themselves up. Sometimes it's as simple as finding a song that resonates with you that will give you that courage to move through fear and take that leap of faith. But if you don't take a leap of faith, nothing is ever going to change in your life. And right now, society desperately needs people of faith. Find something that matters to you. Find what makes your heart sing and move in that direction. And don't let anyone stop you. Thanks for listening, guys. I know I posted that I might go off on a tangent here, and I certainly did. So thanks for bearing with me. Thank you, guys. I know my messenger is blowing up right now, too. I see that as well. Thanks, guys. Please share the show. I am certain we will be getting feedback from it. I promise you Lisa has been here, even though she has not really been heard. And we will see you guys next week. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for listening.